Imagine a building gets sucked into a sinkhole, and the people trapped in that building must do everything possible to survive and get back up. Will they all get saved before they fall deeper down to their death? Hey guys, this is Bodhi from Explained, and today we'll be watching a South Korean comedy disaster movie called Sinkhole, which was just released in 2021. So, buckle up your seatbelts, turn on the subtitles, and spoilers ahead. After 11 years of hard work, Mr. Kim has finally bought an apartment for his family, but his moving day doesn't get off to a good start as his cargo van gets blocked for hours by his new neighbor, Mr. Park's car. When Mr. Park finally moves his car, he has an unapologetic attitude which irritates Mr. Kim. The new neighbors nearly get into a fight before they're stopped by the arrival of Mrs. Kim and her son. When the moving is complete, Mr. Kim and his family cannot contain the excitement of starting their life in their new home. With the change in their lifestyle, Mrs. Kim suggests that he start going to the gym. The next day, while having lunch, Mr. Kim's son places a marble on the floor, which surprisingly starts rolling off towards the window. Not what you want to see in your newly bought home. Taking his wife's advice, Mr. Kim goes to a gym, only to find his neighbor Mr. Park as its trainer. While Mr. Park desperately tries to enroll him in a gym membership, Mr. Kim asks if he had ever felt their building to be slightly tilted. Mr. Park replies that he has never played marbles in his apartment, so he doesn't know if that's the case. Mr. Kim goes to his office and gets congratulated by his colleagues on buying an apartment. However, he's still concerned about the condition of the building, so he starts to research and check if his house is really tilted or not. He later goes out with his family to take a family photo, and to his surprise, the shop operator is none other than Mr. Park. After unwillingly getting his family photographed by Mr. Park, Mr. Kim takes his family out for a nice dinner. And when he calls a cab to drive them back home, the cab driver happens to be Mr. Park yet again, who drives the family back to their building. Mr. Park actually lives with his teenage son, so he takes multiple jobs in order to fulfill every need for his son. It is monsoon season, so it starts to rain quite heavily at night. While everyone is asleep, their building sinks down a little, causing the windows and walls to crack. The next day, when Mr. Park tries to inspect the crack, he accidentally causes everything to break apart. And when his neighbors see the glass wall completely broken, they tell Mr. Park to reinstall it. The little accident from last night has also left cracks around the building. The next day, Mr. Kim invites some of his colleagues for a housewarming party. At the same time, Mr. Park is busy covering the wall with plastic instead of glass. Embarrassed that his colleagues are watching such a scene in his new home, Mr. Kim tries to hurry everyone. But Mr. Park continues to show them the many faults that have recently surfaced around the building. At the housewarming party, Mr. Kim calls Mr. Park to drive his colleagues to their homes. But two of his co-workers, Sung-hyun and Yeon-ju, are too drunk to even move, so they decide to stay the night at Mr. Kim's home. The next day, Mrs. Kim and her son go out shopping, but her son forgets his bag in the apartment. He asks his mom to wait for him and goes to get his bag. When he returns after getting his bag, he meets Mr. Park at the staircase. Meanwhile, Sung-hyun is woken up and is rushing to get to his friend's wedding, but his cab driver is busy on the phone. Mr. Park is busy trying to get a hold of his neighbors to check if their apartment has no running water. He goes to the rooftop to ask his neighbor about the water condition in their building. Just then, the house starts to shake uncontrollably. The non-stop rain from the last few days has created a sinkhole around the building. The residents inside the building start to panic, as the people standing around run for their lives. In just a matter of seconds, the 5-story building starts falling deep into the sinkhole. After falling 500 meters down, the building gets stuck in the sinkhole. The car in which Sung-hyun is stuck falls straight onto the roof where Mr. Park is at. While trying to save himself from falling out of the roof, Sung-hyun reverses the car, which almost crushes Mr. Park. To save himself, Mr. Park pushes the car away from him. Suddenly, the house starts to fall deeper into the sinkhole. While Mr. Park gets covered in the rubble, the car with Sung-hyun falls out of the roof, but fortunately lands straight into Mr. Kim's apartment. Sung-hyun begs his co-worker to save him, but Kim mistakenly breaks the door handle while trying to get the door open. Sung-hyun tries to open it from the inside, but he too ends up breaking the handle. The car yet again starts to roll out of the building, but luckily the building gets stuck in the sinkhole, and Sung-hyun manages to get himself out of the car. Mr. Kim hears some noise from his bedroom and checks it to find Yeon-ju, who hasn't left his house. While trying to get himself out of the rubble, Mr. Park falls off the roof and lands safely on Mr. Kim's rocking chair. He tells Mr. Kim before the house went down, he saw his son take the elevator to get out. Hearing this, Mr. Kim is relieved that his son and wife are okay. But Mrs. Kim hasn't found their son, which probably means he's stuck in the building. After assuring Mr. Kim of his child's safety, Mr. Park rushes to check on his own son. Seeing that his son's shoes are missing, he concludes that he's out with his friends and is safe. They then get on the roof of the building and finally see how deep they've fallen into the sinkhole. Their phones don't have any signal down there, and they're left with no option but to shout for help. A little later, Mr. Park hears someone scream from the storage room on the roof. He opens the door to find his son, who's still unaware of what has happened. It turns out that Sinkhole was smoking when his father came to the roof, so he hid inside the storage room to not get caught by his father. Sinkhole immediately tries to calm everyone and tells them to collect their supplies for their survival, and think of ways to send signals that they're still alive. Meanwhile, the rescue team's attempt to get in the sinkhole fails, as rubble around the sinkhole makes it impossible and unsafe. While trying to collect essential supplies, Mr. Kim comes to realize that his entire life savings has gone into a house that fell into a sinkhole. He apologizes to Sung-hyun and Yeon-ju for getting them into this situation. Mr. Park tries to start a fire and send a signal outside, but just when he lights a fire, it starts to rain. The nervous survivors finally have something to be happy about when Mr. Park prepares a roast turkey for everyone to eat. The rescue team sends a drone in to see the situation down there, but after getting to a certain point, the drone loses signal and falls on the roof of the house. Sung-tae sees the drone and tells everyone that the rescue team is definitely trying to save them. Just then, one of the pillars of the house breaks, which results in the house falling deeper. They all desperately hold on to whatever they can reach to not let themselves fall off of the roof. The house finally stops falling at a point, but due to its tilted position, Sung-hyun slides off the roof and barely holds on to save his life. Yeon-ju risks her life to get the piping cord and throws it towards Sung-hyun. Yeon-ju and Mr. Kim pull the cord to bring Sung-hyun back onto the roof, but their strength isn't enough, so Yeon-ju calls for Mr. Park's help. Mr. Park tries to help them, but he isn't sure if he should risk his own life. Seeing his son's disappointed look, Mr. Park grabs the cord and starts pulling. Together, they manage to save Sung-hyun's life, but when Yeon-ju and Sung-hyun share a short romantic eye-to-eye contact, the cord breaks. While the others manage to hold on, Mr. Park loses his support and falls into a quicksand. The others try to pull him up with the help of the cord, but Sung-tae loses his rational thinking and jumps in to save his father. Mr. Park lets go of the cord to save his son, and slowly they both get consumed by the quicksand. Mr. Kim immediately goes down to this apartment, grabs his rocking chair, and breaks down the window to let them out of the quicksand. Thankfully, Mr. Park and his son get saved just in time. The drone, which is on the roof, gets its signal back and starts flying back upwards. The rescue team watches the footage recorded by the drone and conclude that there are survivors who need to be rescued. But the footage shows no sign of Mr. Kim's son. Similarly, a tenant from the third floor is also concerned about the safety of her son, who's still inside the house. The mothers cry in grief and uncertainty of where their son could be. Mr. Park and Mr. Kim start drinking about how their lives turned out to be. Sung-hyun also starts a conversation with Yeon-ju. The brief moment they shared earlier has sparked a romantic interest between the two. They click selfies to look back on in case they survive the disaster. The rescue team must hurry as the weather suggests a huge rainfall. They send in survival kits through parachutes which safely land in the house. The survival kit includes food, essential headlights, and even a mini oxygen cylinder. And the most useful item in the kit is a satellite phone, through which they can contact the outside world. After getting in contact with his wife, Mr. Kim finds out that his son has been trapped inside the house. Since the stairway has been blocked, Mr. Kim uses the elevator shaft to go down and look for his son. He slowly descends down while the others grab hold of the cord that has been tied to Mr. Kim to ensure his safety. At the same time, the rescue team has been trying to get down in the sinkhole, but unfortunately, the house just outside it starts to fall into the sinkhole. It stops a few meters above, but the impact causes a lot of debris to fall into the house in which Mr. Kim and the others are trapped in. The chaos causes Sung-hyun and Mr. Park to let go of the rope, which is tied to Mr. Kim, who also gets himself loose from the rope to go ahead in search of his son. The rain has filled the basement with water as Mr. Kim starts calling out to his son. He looks everywhere and finally finds his son crying in fear of what's happening around him. Mr. Kim hugs his son and is happy to see him alive. Just then, they see the old lady who lives on the second floor. They climb onto the second floor to see the old lady has lost her son, and sadly, the child who was all alone on the third floor has also died. Mr. Kim cries as he realizes that some people weren't as lucky as him and others to survive the disaster. As they mourn the loss of the people who died, Mr. Kim notices a drainage pipe that can lead them out of the floor. Moreover, the heavy rain has slowly started to fill the second floor with water. Mr. Kim tells the old lady to come with him somewhere safe, but the old lady refuses to leave her son alone even after his death. She cuts a little piece of hair from the dead child and gives it to Mr. Kim to hand over to the poor mother. Mr. Kim apologizes to the old lady as he can't save her and has to think of his son. The old lady tells him not to worry about her and just focus on saving his son's life. Mr. Kim carries his son and starts to move forward through the drainage pipe. He soon finds himself on the side of the building. He carefully starts to move around in the heavy rain, and one wrong step can easily end his and his son's life. He calls out for help, and Mr. Park and the others finally hear that Mr. Kim is alive. They immediately go towards the sound and help pull Mr. Kim and his son back to safety. As Mr. Kim's apartment starts to fill with water, they all move to the roof. They finally notice the house, which is just meters above them. But more than that house, they also have to worry about drowning in the sinkhole due to the pouring rain. Yeonju sees an empty water gallon and tells everyone to get something that can float. While everyone starts to look for things that float on water, Mr. Park brings in a huge water tank that fell down from the house above. To save themselves from drowning, they all get inside the water tank. At last, it's just Mr. Park who's left to enter the tank, but he decides to stay behind as one of them has to close the lid. Sung Tae and others try to stop him from sacrificing his life, but Mr. Park quickly closes the lid. Pretty soon the house gets drowned in water, and so does Mr. Park. Before the ones inside the tank could even comprehend what Mr. Park did for them, the house above them falls and sends the tank even deeper into the water. When the tank starts to float back up, it gets tangled between wires. Realizing the situation, Yeonju starts to hit the tank from the inside to get it moving. Mr. Kim and Seung-hoon also join in, and after a while they successfully manage to get the tank untangled. The tank once again starts to float back up, and it looks like they're going to survive, but unluckily the tank gets pierced after colliding with a steel pipe. They try with all their strength to get the pipe out, so that the tank doesn't get filled with water, but their desperate attempt to get rid of the pipe brings them no result. However, we see that Mr. Park has survived with the help of a mini oxygen cylinder and is trying to get the pipe out of the tank. After a few attempts, he finally manages to push the tank away. The ones inside the tank try to stop the water from flowing inside, but the water flow is too strong for them to stop it with just their hands. So Seung-hoon punches through the hole and stops the water flowing with his arm. Once again, the tank starts to float back up, and Mr. Park also tries to swim his way upward. He tries to get a hold of Seung-hoon's hand, but the water pressure is too much for him to handle and he gets left behind. It looks like Mr. Park is really going to die after saving everyone's life. But luckily, his leg gets tangled to the rope which is still attached to the tank. As the tank floats up in speed, it takes Mr. Park with it. The tank is finally on the surface level, but since there's no one to open the lid, the people inside the tank can soon drown to death. However, Mr. Park is once again there to save their lives. The rescue team sees the footage and rushes to get to their rescue. Mr. Park opens the lid to the tank, and the rescue team carry it out of the sinkhole. Finally, they manage to survive. Mr. Kim reunites with his wife and their family is once again together. Mr. Park also reunites with his son, and it looks like a romantic relationship is imminent between Seung-hoon and Yeonju. It looks like a happy ending, but let's not forget the ones who lost their beloved ones in the disaster. Mr. Kim hands the woman her son's piece of hair, who sadly died in the sinkhole, along with the old lady and her son. At the end of the movie, we see that Mr. Kim's family and Mr. Park have been invited to a housewarming party of Seung-hoon and Yeonju's newly bought caravan. While having a nice dinner outside, they hear a loud noise which instantly causes them to fear the worst. But it turns out that it's just fireworks, which they all happily enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. Tell us your thoughts on the movie down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and do watch some of our other videos as well. And before you leave, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.